This is Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. My guest this week is Ryan Zummallen. Enjoy. Ryan, what is it about the GTR that's so incredible? Is it the ultimate JDM machine? I mean, you wrote the book on it, right? Cult of GTR.
I think a lot of people would say yes. Is it the most, Skyline GTRs specifically.
Exactly.
Is it the most incredible performance machine ever made? No. But if you say, is it kind of the pinnacle of the JDM movement and what JDM represents? I think a lot of people would say yes. And the reasons for that are certainly mechanical. There's a lot of really cool engineering and innovation that went into that as a machine. But more than that, I mean, what has really made it representative of a generation is like the people and the incredible stories surrounding it. So yeah, in that sense, I think it is most intertwined with what most people would associate with like JDM sports cars.
Yeah, it's not just a car, it's a cultural touchstone.
Yeah, in a lot of different ways. Everything from Gran Turismo on the original PlayStation becoming the biggest game of all time, and Fast and Furious and its association there becoming one of the biggest movie franchises of all time. And that's independent of all of its motorsports success and all of the crazy regulations and rules that it ran afoul of for decades. So there's so much wrapped up in it that's really unique to it, even among other Japanese sports cars of the era.
And of course, the other factor is that you could not get them in North America for the longest time.
Yeah.
Until they were 25 years older.
Right.
Or more.
Yeah, except for very rare instances. But yeah, for the most part, that rule came into effect about 9 months before the R32 Skyline GTR debuted. So it was brand new and fresh. It was almost as if they were predicting it and trying to get ahead of it and prevent it preemptively. Now, that's not what happened. That's not the reason that rule came into effect, but that is the impact that it had, is it effectively made it impossible to get it from the start. Nissan never intended to sell it in the US at all. It just wasn't part of their strategy. So it's not like they were, adversely affected by it necessarily. But it's the people in the US who became aware of this car and wanted to get their hands on it and found it incredibly difficult. But even then, like, a lot of people didn't know it existed for a very, very long time because it wasn't available in the US. American media wasn't covering it that much. People found out about it through video games, but they were probably young and didn't have the means anyway. And so for a long time, it was a very if you know car.
Right.
Until it really hit the mainstream and kind of all hell broke loose.
Hey guys, I want to take a quick break to say if you enjoy Horsepower Heritage, there are a few ways you can support the show. Go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and become a patron. There's a link in the show notes. You can make a one-time donation or you can support the show monthly. It's easy, and for the price of a latte, you can help me continue to bring you more of the people and stories behind the machines. You can also leave 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify because that helps new listeners discover the show. Thanks for your support, and now back to the show. And we're talking about 3 generations, right? The R32, which came out, I think, 1989.
That's right.
Yeah. And then R33 in 1994.
I believe so.
And then the R34 in
99.
99. Okay. And they look like, at first glance, they look very similar. And there is that evolutionary aspect to them. Like, they didn't make radical change. The engine stayed the same, right? The inline 6, turbocharged, twin turbo, right?
Twin turbo.
Yeah. And another thing I think is fascinating is that Nissan always was a little bit cagey about what kind of power they produced. The numbers they put out were always artificially low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not just them. Toyota and Honda too had a handshake agreement between the three of them in order to appease the Japanese government that things weren't going to get out of control and they weren't going to unleash
Godzilla.
yeah, and these speed demons on the streets of Tokyo. They ended up doing that anyway, but that's kind of another story. But yeah, they purposefully downplayed the power under the hood, and especially the power that you could create if you wanted to upgrade it.
Right.
That's what really made it a special car. And same with the Supra, and lots of other Japanese cars, is they were overbuilt and underpowered from the factory. So if you wanted to, you could breathe on it and it would add 20, 30, 40 horsepower.
Yeah, there's like 1,700 horsepower GTRs out there.
Oh, there are 2,000 horsepower Skylines.
Really? Yeah, wild. And it was only sold, again, going back to sort of scarcity or perceived scarcity, tough to get your hands on because they were only sold in Japan, Indonesia, later Australia, I think, basically some Pacific Rim countries, but it was very limited distribution of the cars.
Yeah, really not even in the UK. For the R33, they opened up a small number of allocations for the UK. But prior to that, really just Japan and some areas of Asia. There's a story in the book about an Australian motorsports team chasing the Australian Nissan representative around a racetrack, like demanding that you guys need to bring this here because it was already so successful in motorsports. And so, yeah, apparently Nissan executives were hounded, especially by the Aussies at that time.
And there are no left-hand drive Skyline GTRs, are
correct?
There?
No,
none built. Yeah,
I mean there were some conversions,
right?
But there's kind of no reason for it.
Right. If you're a JDM guy, the right-hand drive is part of the game. Like,
right.
You want that. I see so many cool JDM cars running around Southern California. Everything from high ace vans to, certain Mitsubishi 4x4s. You still don't see that many GTRs though. And it's not like the car was a small production. I mean, I think they made 43,000 odd R32s. So they're out there.
Yeah.
But they're still relatively rare on this side of the Pacific.
Certainly rare. Definitely increasing quickly. Right. I would say every year we probably grow the GTR community exponentially here in the US. Just more awareness, more availability. Every year, a different year of Skyline GTR becomes available to import. So you've got a whole brand new batch that's eligible every 12 months. And so, not to mention all the other ones from outside the US that you could bring in. And yeah, just the media attention has never been higher. The demand has never been higher. And, America's the biggest market in the world. And for it to have not been available to people for so long, and then all of a sudden it is, it's just floodgates are open. And there was a lot of speculation that once the car becomes legal in the US, prices will come down because that forbidden fruit aspect and that pressure valve will be released. It's been the exact opposite.
I agree. I was looking at auction results before, in preparation for our conversation today. And there was one that just almost kissed $1 million at auction this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I think it was a special edition, and it's very confusing how many special edition GTRs there have been produced. But you can get one for as low as 40, 45,000 in kind of rough shape. But again, just barely under $1 million. We're talking F40 territory easily. So this car has, like you said earlier, it's the mechanical fascination, but also that cultural influence.
Mm-hmm.
For that generation, it's like the Holy Grail.
And Americans are putting their own spin on it, which is different from a Japanese style. It's different from an Australian style. And so once you see a couple of examples of these things coming in here and being done up in a certain way, it's just increasing the demand for other people to go and do it. But now there's less availability because everyone's trying to get their hands on one to bring them to the U.S. And so it doesn't matter that there are more here now because the demand has not gone down. And as long as that's true, you're going to be competing with people to bring them in, and that will especially affect the special editions. Like it was probably a 400R that you're talking about. That was close to $1 million.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Eventually, and probably pretty soon, one of them will hit $1 million. There's another really clean example coming up during Monterey Car Week here in a couple of months. And last year at Monterey, a similar one sold for $900,000. This one could match that number. It could exceed it and go to $1 million. I think it'll probably, 900,000 seems to be like what people are comfortable with right now. I think that $1 million figure, especially at a public auction, is a little bit scary for some people.
Sure.
So it might be a while before we see that. But like regardless, we're talking well over $500,000 for a 30-year-old Japanese sports car.
I know. I never thought I would see the day. The Toyota 2000 GT kind of broke the seal on that. I think that was the first Japanese car to sell for over $1 million. Again, another iconic model. The other thing I think recently that has really helped the GTR is Larry Chen. And we're going to talk about Larry because you have published a fantastic book called Life at Shutter Speed. It's kind of the definitive book on Larry's photography work, but been following his journey on YouTube and social media in getting his GTR, and it's been amazing. And he ended up having the whole thing fully restored, and that was like the detail that they went to. I mean, full disassembly, and there's hidden rust pockets, and so much detail went into what Larry showed everyone, and I think that just drove further fascination.
I think Larry is fantastic at showing the detail that goes into things that we probably take for granted a little bit, whether it's how a wheel is actually made or what's going on behind the scenes of an engine build or something like that. But I agree. I think he's had a huge impact on things, and is another example of, you know, a guy in the US taking things to his version of the extreme, perfect dream JDM car. His R34 is impeccable. It's unbelievable, and he's brought it out to a couple of events when we've had, you know, book release parties and things like that, and it just never fails to immediately attract people, oohing and awing, and there's good reason for that. The GTR is aligned with so many like Japanese masters of technique and of process. They don't compromise. They don't speed up their process for anybody, really. And that makes the parts rarer. It also makes them more desirable. It also means like they really know what they're doing. And, you know, one of the places that he worked with was Garage Yoshida, which is famous for like complete teardown, rust proof everything, acid wash everything down to every nut and bolt. And like you hear that and you get a picture of what that might mean, but for him to document every part of the process, and you start to see and understand like why this takes so long, but also the benefits that you get out of it and how it can take something from special to extraordinary. Yeah, with his video series and Instagram posts, and you can follow along on the whole process. It's definitely added cachet to not just the GTR, but you know, really what goes into these cars that we love.
Yeah, and it's important to highlight, like what you just said, the level of painstaking, methodical work required to bring an average car up to, you know, 100 points in any concours event or any judging format. It's amazing. You wrote the book, like I said, Cult of GTR. Was that an obvious subject to tackle?
For me, yes. I couldn't believe it hadn't been done already. I've always wanted to write car books that went beyond the machinery. I think there are a lot of people who do those type of books very, very well. That like really get into the specs and the provenance um, and the mechanics of everything. And that's that's not my area of interest. My area of interest is like the cultural impact and all of the other factors that go into like how did this thing come to be exactly? Why was Nissan, what specifically about Nissan made them the company that was going to do something like this? And what I found was, much a much more rich and complicated story than I thought. It's not just a car company that wanted to do something crazy, so I threw a bunch of money at it. It is a story of a company that, I mean, Nissan, those two words literally mean Japanese industry. This is a company that from the very beginning, from its founding around the turn of the century, around 1900, was intended to show off the capabilities of Japan and and what it can build and how it can make a worldwide impact. And it's no accident that they then decided to benchmark the greatest sports cars in the world, but make it affordable. And add into all that, the 25-year rule, this explosion in popularity and the lengths that people will go to try to get their hands on one. And it wasn't an obvious story to me. And I thought that if I could uncover just a little bit of information that hadn't been reported anywhere else and shine some light on what actually happened, then that would be a success, because there's so much myth and rumor about these things. So I really wanted to try to set the record straight and say, okay, these myths are out there, but here's really what the story was. There are people out there who will tell you the Skyline GTR was illegal because it was too fast, or it didn't have the right glass in its windows. Like, I've heard those stories from people who very genuinely were telling me this is the reason, and I'm like, it's actually has nothing to do with that. But I think it just goes to show, like, when you have something that's been shrouded in mystery for so long, it breeds this kind of like, you're not sure what's real. And so I really wanted to try and put a pin on things and say, no, this is the real story. And I felt like I had the training and the background to be able to do that. With, I started in news journalism and covering politics and crime and, stuff where you really had to do your digging and you had to be right. And
you had a short timeline, right?
Yeah. I did it on a short timeline. But I felt like if I relied on the tools that I had from my training in a career in journalism, we could uncover some stuff. And I was willing to ask weird questions. I've had a chief of police call me and yell at me because of a story that I wrote that he didn't like before in my earlier days in covering local news. So I wasn't concerned really about like asking unpopular questions and really trying to get to the root of things. And I found that when you start to peel the layers back just a little bit on this story, it just opened so many other stories. Most car stories that I've done in the past, like, you open a door and there's another door, or there's the information you were looking for. And with the GTR, you open one door and there's 20 other doors. And you can choose how deep you want to go, because it really is kind of never ending. And I found that really fun. And I think it led to a book that is all encompassing. Like, it's not just about a car, it's about a country and its history and its people.
You were talking about myth that grows up around a car that's an object of fascination. Like, you don't have that about the Chrysler minivan. I mean, it's just an appliance. So inevitably, when you got a car that just like hits people right in the chest and it's an emotional experience, there's going to be lore, inevitably. I love that. How did you go from journalist, reporter to automotive writer?
I always thought I was going to be a sports writer, and so I took a job here in Long Beach covering news and politics and things because they would let me write about sports as well. And so I did that for a few years and was really trying to build a name and a career as a sports writer. But I knew a little bit about cars. I knew a little bit about motorsports, and so I was able to pick up some jobs doing writing on that for a little while. And there was just more opportunity to keep following that. I got offered a full-time job in 2012 to start covering cars full-time, and I thought, well, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
A lot of my journalism classmates from college were struggling to figure things out at newspapers and magazines, and I thought, writing about cars, that'll work. And so I jumped into that with both feet, and 15 years later, we're here.
You were at Edmunds.com, right? Senior reviews editor?
Yeah, that's right.
And then did a bunch of freelance work, Road and Track, Automobile Magazine, a lot of the big titles.
Yeah.
But now you're publishing, which is yet another leap. That had to be scary.
Absolutely. I think what I found with some of those bigger pieces for freelance places, Road and Track, and then another big one that I did was for a website called The Verge. That was really my strength, was like finding a story that I could really dive into, sink my teeth, take my time. And what I found is I think what comes back from my type of stories is something richer and deeper than you might expect from a car story. But at the time, the jobs that were available were like writing 10 stories a day, like churning out as many blogs as possible, as quickly as possible.
Digital media, right? It's the curse of digital media.
I just wasn't a fan. And I felt like we were all missing something deeper by doing that. And I think ultimately we ended up devaluing our own content by doing that. And I could kind of see the writing on the wall. And I think in the last few years, we've lost a lot of automotive media outlets that have just shuttered completely or laid off entire staffs or got cut down to like a skeleton crew. And I could kind of see that coming because I had seen it happen in newspapers a decade earlier. I wanted to keep sinking my teeth into stories, and I figured the best way to do that was going to be figure out how to publish things myself. And so I started with my book, Slow Car Fast, in 2019.
Tell me about that book.
Slow Car Fast plays on the old mantra, it's better to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
Right.
Which I found was becoming a really popular phrase in the 2010s with younger people who were into cars. Because for the most part, we couldn't really afford more horsepower. And so you had to get creative. You had to embrace more affordable, less powerful cars and figure out ways to have fun with them. And this is in light of coming off of the 2008 financial crisis and post-recession economy, which is not great. And to participate in car culture, you had to get creative. But car culture was really thriving at that time, and not only thriving, but changing in really exciting ways. Specifically the rise of grid life as a motorsports festival that's open to amateurs, such a cool concept and really novel at the time. The rise of Radwood at the time, which was celebrating 80s and 90s cars, which was, people couldn't believe that at the time. Why would you want to celebrate 80s and 90s cars? These are all shitbox econo boxes that were starved of power because of, the oil crisis from the 70s.
As a kid of the 80s, I had to say Radwood was a surprising development for me. Nostalgia is a funny thing.
But today it feels completely natural, I think.
It does.
So all these exciting things were happening, driven by, millennials. But at that time, and tell me if you remember this, the narrative out there was millennials hate cars. Why aren't they buying cars? Why aren't they getting driver's licenses? Why aren't they buying my old 32 Ford or my old
55 Chevy or whatever?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I conclude therefore that they hate cars. it couldn't have been further from the truth. And I was seeing that every weekend I was going out. There was some completely creative, innovative take on a car show or a meet or an event. And so it seemed so obvious to me that young people were being affected by economic conditions and were adapting and changing, and bringing their own influences into it because they grew up on video games and they grew up on loving Japanese cars, which to a lot of older car guys, like, why would you want to celebrate a Japanese car?
Well, I mean, after all, Japan's ascendance in the U.S. didn't really happen until the post-1973 time period,
Right.
after the gas crisis. And before that, they had a hard time selling any of them. Another guy, though, that really helped put Japanese cars on the map in the States was Peter Brock. Brock Racing Enterprises, the Datsun 510, the giant killer, right?
No question. John Morton driving 510s and 240s and yeah, taking down not just American cars, but the best sports cars from Europe too. I mean, it's so funny now to think, but like, people looked at the BRE Datsuns and thought, oh, Japanese cars can actually beat, other BMWs and stuff. That was a mind-blowing thought at the time. But like you said, it really put things on the map. But yeah, ultimately the point of Slow Car Fast was to debunk that idea that millennials don't like cars. They just are changing what it means to be an enthusiast.
Yeah. If car culture has always been sort of compartmentalized and splintered, I think the generation we're talking about has even more finely divided car culture. And one of the other changes that I've seen is, when I was growing up, it used to be that people were very brand loyal and tribal about the brand. And now they all mix it up, which is great.
Yeah, I think the internet changed everything, where you don't have to subscribe to just one type of car or one make or model. It's so easy to find information on anything that's out there, and it's so easy to see other people enjoying the things that they enjoy too. And so there's more knowledge broadly, generally. I think there's less knowledge, like, specifically. I think there's fewer, like, experts on one particular car or engine. But there's more people who are, like, true enthusiasts of all types of autos or motorsports, and that's a really cool change, in my opinion.
Yeah, the knowledge is more like an inch deep and a mile wide, rather than like savant level knowledge on a certain car or a certain brand. Yeah,
and there's also so much more. I mean, usually when we're talking about, like, these shifts in generational changes, like, there's a 30-year difference at least, and that's 30 years of new cars that have come out and, like, all this time. And so there's just way more styles out there. There's way more cars. There's way more technology and innovation. And it must have been so much easier back in the day to, like, know everything there was to know about a car or automaker. And now there's so many different kinds out there. You throw EVs into the mix, and not to say that, like, everybody loves EVs, but I'm just saying, like, so many changes and so much more to learn and appreciate and have fun with and enjoy.
Yeah, and the technology has moved faster and faster. Up until the late 60s, everything was pretty much technologically the same. I mean, you had certain things like disc brakes and fuel injection that came into, widespread use. But for the most part, like, for the first 50 plus years of the automobile, there wasn't a whole lot of technological leaps. And now it's like something I probably will never understand, and maybe that's just because I'm not motivated to, but like flashing ECUs and all of the computer stuff that goes into a car. Now, I don't get it. I don't want to get it. It's not, and I'm not a Luddite, but I don't know. There's something about mechanical versus electronic that it doesn't scare me, but it's just not, it doesn't drive me. But that's not to say that there aren't a lot of guys who really sink their teeth into that.
Yeah, and that's not your particular thing.
Right.
But imagine for the people who it is their thing, when they go really deep on it, there's no limit to the things you can do to cars and the different things you can learn. And like, there's plenty of people who are young enthusiasts today who are on both sides. Like, some really like the nostalgia and, really care about the 60s aesthetic. And there are others who are really obsessed with the 90s tuner era. And there are others who are really into tuning fun EVs. But you can really dive deep into all of those things. And I just think it's cool, the amount of variety and diversity that you see when you go to a car show now. And we're spoiled in Southern California, where like you go to a random free meet on the weekend and you could see almost literally one of everything. And there might be $1 million Ferraris, and there might be a $20,000 JDM little K car that gets more attention than those exotics.
Definitely.
Um,
And you can see stuff that you won't see anywhere else in the country, probably.
Right.
There might be a few exceptions, like Seattle area, Portland, maybe Miami, but very few places can have the concentration and the variety that we have. So we're totally spoiled. Your book, Waiting for the Sun to Come Down, by Kevin McCauley, photographer who plays with light and shadow in very dramatic ways, how they play off different cars. Amazing shots.
Yeah, thank you. And there are so many fantastic automotive photo books out there. How do we do something that's not just one of those, but something different? How do we do something that's really going to catch attention and show that we're trying to do something different? And, Kevin brought a very different style to the table. And, there's all makes of cars in there. It's Porsche heavy, but there's all different stuff in there. And, the uniting theme of it all is this really innovative style that puts a twist on the classic car book.
Yeah. One of your other efforts has been something called Bayside Magazine, which is a one-issue only magazine.
Bayside is a group of friends who are all really talented photographers and designers here in SoCal. And they just get together and throw meets and host rallies and host fun events. And they got on my radar because they were just posting cool stuff on Instagram. We got to be friends, and they had this idea to put a magazine together of their favorite builds, their favorite cars, their favorite road trips. The photography was incredible. Their design work was really strong. And so I said, let's go for it. And their thing is kind of mixing nostalgia, JDM style, and a beachy coastal lifestyle, which was just a cool convergence, I thought. And to me, that is something you can sit down with and really spend your time with, slow down, and just enjoy something that's really visually pleasing. And I think they did a tremendous job putting it together.
No, it's terrific. And immediately the art direction and the style of the magazine makes me think of Japanese car magazines.
Exactly.
So you've got also a series of novels. The author is Sam Matani. And these are like sort of automotive influenced. It's an automotive influenced saga. Is that a good?
Yeah. We call them automotive spy thrillers.
Okay.
So there's, tales of assassins and espionage and, worldwide, the world is at stake type of stuff. But most of the characters are enthusiasts, and so they drive cool stuff, and there's an automotive angle to everything, and there's exciting car chases, of course. Sam Matani was an editor at Road and Track for many, many years, and was typically the one who would get their Japan assignments. And so he was really the first person for a major U.S. magazine to drive and review the big Japanese sports cars of the 90s, including the Skyline GTR. So he's got a very, very rich history in bringing Japanese cars to America. And he's transitioned into writing fiction, and we had a lot of fun putting that together. And so, yeah, it's called the Prototype Trilogy. Keys to the Empire is the third and final book that came out also in 2024. It's very noir.
Noir Los Angeles. I was just going to say that. So cool. All of your titles again, you said you wanted to do something different, and it all comes back to people. And the cars are a way to get to know the people, but the books aren't really about cars per se, are they?
Yeah, I agree. I think cars are like the unifying theme and they're the through line. But each one is an exploration of people or a culture or art in various ways. And I think that's very natural to cars to me because I think a lot of times we view cars as if they exist in a vacuum, but there's nothing more varied and diverse and complicated than cars. They have to do with travel and transportation. They have to do with the environment. They have to do with art and design and engineering. Certainly, economics and business. The implications of the auto industry are massive, and they're extremely political. And so I think to ignore those things is to not really get the full picture of what it means to care about cars.
Yeah. They're about status, station in life, personal freedom, all of that stuff. I've said this before on the show, but I'll say it again. I know you're going to agree with me. You go to a car event and you end up not really looking at cars. You're just talking with people.
Yeah. I think it's amazing that they bring us together and they give us a connection point. But I agree, like at events, it becomes about the people, it becomes about the community. I wanted to see books that reflected that.
Yeah.
Because I do see it in other genres. I do see it in books about food or music or travel. Cars have the same effect on people, but I didn't see that, on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
And so that's been the mission.
Let's talk about Life at Shutter Speed, Larry Chen's book. How did that come together? First of all, we got to say Larry is probably the preeminent automotive photographer right now. And Larry's work has a heavy emphasis on Asian car culture. So although you'll see Larry at Pebble Beach, you'll see him at Monterey Car Week, he's traveling the world and he's like uncovering these amazing shops and restoration businesses and collections all over Japan. And I think he's been to Malaysia and Vietnam. Really fascinating stuff. But yeah, let's talk about that book.
Just an incredible monument to Larry's 20-year career in car culture. He really started coming up through the drifting scene when it was in its grassroots stage, and has been there to document its rise into what it is now, which is like a major, massive spectacle. And so along the way, like he's captured these incredible images, and it really aligned with what we are trying to do, which is like elevate car culture to almost museum level status. Because I don't think we should wait 40 or 50 years to look back and appreciate this stuff. I think we should be able to appreciate this stuff now as it's happening. First of all, he's an incredible photographer. He just has, I think his greatest talent is he has a knack for knowing the exact right place to be every single time. If you look through this book, which is 400 pages, by the way, over 2,500 photos, every time I look through it, I'm blown away by like one little image that's tucked away up in the corner somewhere, because he just absolutely nailed it with the shutter speed and the angle and the composition. But you add that technical skill and kind of innate ability to the sheer variety that he's able to cover in motorsports, in car culture, sometimes private collections.
And that book is like 10 by 16. It's a big book.
Yeah, it's it's big. It weighs 8 pounds.
And it needs to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive. But the goal we really wanted to have was let's document the last 20 years of car culture and really preserve it so that people can look back on this stuff right now. And if you go through this book, you can see the progression. It's in reverse chronological order. So it starts with the newest and ends with the oldest. As you turn each page, you really see the evolution. And I think the last 20 years has been the most dramatic shift in car culture, probably in its since the automobile was invented. And you can see that evolution in this book, which is what I'm probably most proud of.
How hard was it to select the images? Because Larry has to have shot literally a million different images.
Luckily, he did all that.
Yeah, wise.
He had it ready to go. He had been every year he does a best of gallery, and so that made it pretty easy for him to just hand things over to us, and then we were able to sit down and say, okay, which things do we really want to give extra placement, extra prominence to? And that was a super fun process. But yes, it was definitely helped that we didn't have to sift through every single image. They were pretty much pre-curated. But it was a total blast figuring out, okay, what are the key events from this year? And how did that lead into the year after it? And what stories do we want to tell? Because Larry did quite a bit of writing for this too.
How did you connect with Larry in the first place? And I mean, developing that trust so that he says, yeah, Carrara Media is the company I want to publish my book.
We ran into each other at a GTR event when I was researching Cult of GTR, and he was really intrigued with the idea of somebody focused solely on publishing automotive books. He's a GTR owner, not just with the R34, but also an R32 that he already had in the States at that time. So I came over to the house. He showed me around the car. I interviewed him for the book, and so he's featured in Cult of GTR as well. And then we just kept in touch. He was constantly asking questions about like what it takes to get something published, and he liked the photo books that we had done up to that point. And so eventually I said, do you want to just have a meeting and start to hash this thing out? And so yeah, we sat down, and a year and a half later, this came out.
It's fantastic. Ryan, I've seen a lot of Volkswagen titles over the years, but this has to be one of the most unique ever. Vochos Unidos.
Well, that's one of the highest compliments you could give us, so thank you. Yeah, again, we wanted to do something completely different. A mutual friend connected us to Rodrigo Gaia VR, who is an extremely talented photographer, and he said, I have an idea for a Volkswagen book. And I thought, well, there's going to have to be more to it than that. Yeah. And he sent over some images, and I immediately said, this is completely different. This is something we're definitely interested in. He lived in Mexico for 6 years and essentially every day did nothing but shoot VW Beetles all over the country. And there's an incredible Volkswagen culture in Mexico. He was in Mexico City, but he also traveled around to other towns. And what you get from his photos, I think, is through the Beetle, or Vocho, as they're known down there. What you get is a real sense of what makes Mexico special, what makes its culture so warm and vibrant, and what makes its people unique. You get a sense of the resilience of keeping these old cars on the road. If some of them are really beat up, you get a sense of the creativity and joy for life, because some of these cars are impeccably maintained or really innovative. There's one with a completely wood interior, which is really wild. And there's another with a leather pouch for holding beer bottles on the outside of the car, just behind the door. So again, we wanted to explore, okay, what can we learn about a country and its people through the way they treat their Volkswagens? And I wanted this to feel less like a car book and more like a travel book. I wanted you to open the pages and hear the music and smell the food, and feel like you were immediately immersed in what's going on there. And thankfully, Rodrigo is unbelievably talented, and we just had the task of putting it all together in a cool way. And I think we did that.
You know what you're doing a little bit? You're doing the Anthony Bourdain thing. You're using the cars as an entree to the rest.
Yeah, I think he was definitely an influence. Some of my favorite shows of all time, some of my favorite hours of television of all time. We keep that in mind for sure. Like, Bourdain has definitely come up in conversation before. But I think more than anything, what we tell every author is we're not going to change your vision. Like whatever vision you're bringing to us, I'm not going to ask you to change it, but I am going to challenge you to enhance it. Like how deep can we go? What are we really trying to say? And what's the most powerful, impactful way to say it? And maybe that aligns a little bit with what he was trying to do too.
And how about the latest title, Ready to Rock?
Ready to Rock is an unbelievable opportunity that I immediately said yes to. It's the story of RTR Vehicles, which was founded by Vaughn Gittin Jr., two-time Formula Drift champion, a real pioneer of building drifting as a legitimate sport in the United States, who now runs the RTR Formula Drift team, also runs the RTR off-road team, which competes at King of the Hammers and Baja and all these incredible races. And, at the center of it all is Vaughn, this kid from the East Coast who was doing donuts in old Nissans, but just had an incredible drive to succeed and win on a stage that had never been done before by an American driver. And once he did that, had this incredible drive to take Mustangs to another level, build a culture around them that didn't exist at the time, and build a company that was treating Mustangs in ways that hadn't been done before. And so the book is the story of that, his background and his rise.
And in so doing, he got the attention of Ford Motor Company, which I think is terrific.
Exactly. Yeah. They've had a long-standing relationship. Ford has supported his drifting program for a long time. And Vaughn says in the book, he kind of always envisioned them coming together at some point and being true partners on things. And that's really come to fruition in the last couple of years. RTR and Ford have been working very closely. And this year, in a couple of months here, Ford will release the Mustang RTR, which is a Mustang built in the Ford factory to RTR's specifications, which is just unbelievable. And there's going to be an RTR version of the Bronco as well.
I saw that.
And, that makes Vaughn a one of two type of person in Ford history. And the other one is Carroll Shelby.
Exactly. Very cool.
So it's just a truly unique story, especially like for it to end here is one thing, like to partner with, a big name in motorsports and give them the platform to make a special Mustang is very cool. But for it to have started with drifting and all this Japanese influence, and for that be to what got him there, I think is really incredible and a fantastic story. And we had him write it alongside Mike Spinelli, who's been an automotive journalist for a very long time. And the two of them coming together and putting this story into book form, I think was just a killer combination. And we were able to back it up with amazing photos, many of them from Larry Chen, and a killer design, which I think all of those things put together, it's unlike any other car book out there, which is always the goal.
Let's do a lightning round. The car you want most in the world, price, no object.
I'm a Ferrari 550 Maranello guy.
Why?
I fell in love with it the second I saw it. It's what made me interested in all other cars. As a 13-year-old. Really, I was a huge basketball guy, and Michael Jordan had one. But also, I look at it today, or I see one at a show or something, and I truly think that's the prettiest car ever made.
Most overrated collector, special interest, exotic car.
It's hard to look at what's happened with air-cooled Porsches and not say that. Not to demean them in any way, because I think incredible machines, and I think the culture that has been built up around them is very, very cool. But it's hard to argue that we haven't reached an oversaturation point.
The car you would pick if you had to drive one car for the rest of your life. That's a toughie.
One car for the rest of my life. I am really into older BMW Alpinas. I think that would be... I think if I was going to drive one thing for the rest of my life, style would be the most important thing.
So like a B12?
Something like a B6 Alpina would just be chef's kiss.
That's a well-educated choice.
I was thinking Viper if I really wanted to punish myself.
Oh my God.
But I would love every second of it. But yeah, I think I would go for style.
Viper in Long Beach traffic? Forget about it. Automotive journey anywhere in the world that you want to take. I mean, be creative. I once interviewed a guy that drove his 928 from Paris throughout Iran and back.
That's incredible.
And by the way, in no way will I hold you to this.
I don't know. I have a feeling. This will stick with me. No, I'm really drawn to long road trips. My family did really long road trips on vacation every year when I was a kid. I would love to go to Australia. I would really like to explore the culture, and scenery and terrain out there. I think that'd be killer. Maybe like E-Class AMG wagon.
E63?
Yeah. Just something with way too much power that I don't need and that I can just settle into and cruise.
And plenty of room for your gear.
Exactly.
Because if you're going to be in Australia, you're going to be camping out.
Exactly.
Right.
You're going to need a lot of first aid kits.
They say that is the continent that most wants to kill you.
Yeah.
All the different venomous, poisonous things there, creepy crawlies and whatnot.
Got to be ready.
I love Australia. I took a road trip in Australia in 2002. Flew into Sydney, rented a Mazda panel van, 5-speed, obviously right-hand drive. We picked it up in King's Cross, right in the heart of Sydney. The parking garage that it was in had a corkscrew ramp. So that was like, okay, now I have to drive a right-hand drive manual up this corkscrew and then immediately out onto the Sydney Harbour Bridge, out to the bush, across the bridge to North Sydney. But by the time I got across the bridge, I had it dialed. It felt so good to be shifting with my left hand, being on the right-hand side. It was easy. It felt more natural than being in a left-hand drive car. It's so weird, but...
Interesting.
Yeah.
How many times did you go for the turn signal and hit the windshield wipers, though?
I probably did do that a few times. But we were all over Australia in that thing. I bought a surfboard in Manly. The exchange rate was really good. It was like 2-to-1. So the surfboard was super cheap. But it was like a 9.6. So, which is why I rented the panel van in the first place. I knew that I was going to be doing that. But up and down the coast, went surfing in all sorts of spots. It was an amazing trip. And, just a panel van, nothing special. But I have a soft spot for that car.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the experience, right? And I guess if I was going to say Australia, I guess the correct answer is always Land Cruiser, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's your answer there.
That's probably what it should have been.
Maybe not as comfortable as the AMG, but yeah.
Survival.
Yeah, and you can go to any parts store in Australia and get what you need for that.
Yep.
So, all right, next question. Figure in the automotive world, living or dead, that you'd most like to have dinner with, spend an evening with.
There's a woman named Anne Charlotte Vernet who is French, and we did correspond for a long time over email because I really wanted to write a story about her, but it's been a long time now, and I'm not sure it'll happen. So for anybody who wants to look her up, the story is incredible. She grew up in the town of Le Mans, and so her believe grandfather was part of the organizing committee for the race, and she taught herself to drive race cars, race Porsches at Le Mans for a long time. I believe still to this day, probably the woman who's driven in the 24-hour race more than anyone else. But she also drove the Dakar Rally for many years. And you may remember at one point, Margaret Thatcher's son competed in that race.
And went missing.
She was his co-driver.
Okay.
So they were missing in the desert together for days.
Mark Thatcher.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And, the British Royal Guard went searching for them and ultimately found them. And she told me some pretty incredible stories that really never found a home for writing, but and we never got a chance to meet in person. But I would love to sit down and really dive into what all happened there.
Yeah, she has to have a ton of amazing stories.
Yeah.
The key is to figure out how to put them all together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan Zummallen, publisher at Carrara Books, and the website is carrarabooks.com.
That's right.
And order direct.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. We'll get it out to you fast.
I'll have all the links in the show notes. Ryan, thanks. This was really fun. Thanks for having me in today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. Support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage. Throw a few bucks in the gas tank. You can find more on the YouTube channel and Instagram. And if you enjoy the show, leave me a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And until next time, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.